They didn't ask questions. They didn't check credentials. They just saw a black man in first class and told him, in front of everyone, to move. No reason, no explanation, just a cold, flat command. We need that seat for someone more important. A man who'd paid full fare. A man with the right connections. A man whose only difference was his skin. What they didn't know was that decision would cost them $500 million. But who was he? Why did his silence shake an entire industry? And how did one act of arrogance explode into global headlines? It started at 6:48 a.m. inside Terminal 4 of JFK International, where the usual airport choreography unfolded with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Wheeled suitcases glided across glossy floors. The scent of dark roast coffee hung in the air like luxury cologne. Boarding announcements echoed in a practiced cadence. Amid the noise, James Carter walked slowly, deliberately, like a man who already owned half the air in the building and was considering buying the rest. No entourage, no fanfare, just James in a fitted three-piece charcoal suit, collar button left open with intentional flair, and a soft leather duffel bag in hand. His boarding pass, tucked between his fingers, read Atlantic Flight 332 to Zurich, first class, seat 1A. James wasn't flying under his full name. The ticket said J. Caldwell, calculated choice. He was finalizing the acquisition of a major equity stake in Atlantic Air quietly. No suits, no investor calls, just him and his instincts. The best way to understand a company's true values, he believed, was not through quarterly reports but through lived experience. The gate agent barely looked up. "Mr. Caldwell, first class. You're all set," she said with polite indifference. She didn't expect someone like him to be flying solo, dressed that sharply, no tie, no jewelry. Something about him didn't fit her idea of a priority guest. Still, James smiled, thanked her, and boarded. The first-class cabin was dimly lit and quiet, all soft gold tones and glossy wood accents. He stepped into a bubble of muted elegance, whispers over crystal glasses, leather chairs creaking under tailored suits. But when he reached 1A, his seat was occupied. A white man lounged there comfortably, legs crossed, champagne glass in hand, reading emails like the aircraft was his personal office. The man didn't glance up. James checked his boarding pass again. Seat 1A. A flight attendant approached, tall and poised. Her name tag read Sarah. "Excuse me," James said calmly. "I believe that's my seat." Sarah didn't ask for his name or check his ticket. She glanced at him, smiled politely falsely, and said, "We've had a last-minute change, sir. That seat's been reassigned." James didn't move. "That's my confirmed seat. Purchased and reserved in advance." Sarah leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "We had a request from one of our Legacy Platinum members. We're asking for your cooperation." She gestured subtly towards 7C in business class. Still nice, but not what he'd paid for. James raised an eyebrow. "And who made that request?" "Mr. Edward Lang," she replied with a practiced tone. "He's a senior investor, very influential. He specifically requested seat 1A. James knew the name. Edward Lang, a venture capitalist notorious for his arrogance. 2 years ago, he'd been caught on camera mocking diversity hires at a tech summit. Sarah added, "He flies this route weekly." James nodded slowly. "And that entitles him to remove another paying passenger from their seat?" Sarah hesitated. "Sometimes we make accommodations for our highest-tier members." The implication hung in the air. James wasn't one of them, not in their eyes. Passengers nearby began to glance up, sensing tension. Some turned away. One man whispered to his wife, "He probably used miles. They're stricter about upgrades now." James didn't raise his voice. Instead, he pulled out his phone. "I'd like to speak to the flight supervisor." Sarah's smile dropped. "There's no need to escalate." "There is," James said. He tapped the number and held the phone to his ear. Sarah subtly gestured to another crew member. A younger attendant named Ethan approached, looking uneasy. "Is there an issue?" he asked. Sarah whispered, "Just observe." Passengers in the cabin now leaned in. One woman muttered, "Looks like some tech guy trying to play big league." Her husband chuckled. Sarah, emboldened, extended her hand toward the aisle. "Sir, please, we need to continue boarding," James replied, voice even. "Just to be clear, you're removing me from the seat I paid for, without verification, Because someone else requested it? Before Sarah could respond, Edward Lang looked up. Don't take it personally, he said smugly. Some people just need to remember their place. That line turned the air to glass. Sarah avoided James's eyes. If you don't comply, she said, we'll have to involve security. James exhaled slowly. Then bring them. 2 uniformed ground agents arrived within minutes. Sir, one said, please come with us. James picked up his bag. His walk down the aisle was silent. Not a single voice objected. Not one person stood up. He sat in row 12, business class, posture perfect. He could hear Sarah in the galley. You saw him, she whispered. Do you think the company wants someone like that next to the board? James clenched his jaw not because of her words, but because of how casual they sounded. This wasn't one employee. This was baked in. Later, an older man sitting next to him leaned over. Same thing happened last month. Young black guy got reassigned. No reason. James looked at him. What happened? Nothing, the man replied. No one said a word. Because comfort always wins over conscience. James leaned back, quiet, calculating. Suddenly, Edward's voice echoed from the front cabin. I don't care how much he paid. Sitting next to someone like that ruins the feel. First class isn't a bus. Sarah scrolled nervously through her messages. A new one from the flight manager popped up. Maintain image. No racial mixing. Too much press lately. Ethan caught her glance. You heard what he said, he whispered. Don't get involved, Sarah snapped. James opened his notebook and wrote something slowly, then stopped. Later, Michael, the flight manager, approached. Mr. Caldwell, we've had reports you've been disruptive. James stared at him. For sitting? For writing? In the interest of safety, Michael continued. We're rerouting to Shannon for precautionary deplaning. The announcement crackled over the PA. The cabin murmured. Is this really happening? One passenger whispered. Phones came out. A college student near the front began filming. They moved him. Now they're removing him. For what? Within minutes, the live stream went viral. As James was escorted off by Irish security, Michael muttered to them. Better now than when he causes a scene. The officer looked at James. He's the calmest one here, mate. Back in the cabin, the air felt different. Edward lifted his glass. Flight already feels better. These people bring courtroom energy. It's not racy, it's class. That comment landed, and this time, it didn't go unnoticed. Ethan looked around. Sarah pretended to restock snacks, but the tension was no longer quiet. It was boiling. Suddenly, a buzz hit Sarah's phone. Breaking, black executive removed from flight. Alleged racial targeting. She paled. Moments later, James reboarded. Edward's jaw dropped. You again? James said nothing. Then, you mistook silence for weakness. That ends now. He held up a small black card, the kind that didn't need a name. Michael recognized the logo. Valen, he whispered. James nodded. Valen Group owns 51% of Atlantic Air as of 2 days ago. I'm the CEO. Silence. James stepped to the galley phone. This is Carter. Initiate Clause 7C. Pull back Zurich line. Notify legal. He hung up and turned to Michael. You removed me from my seat. That breach will cost you. Edward scoffed. What is this, a stunt? James replied. This airline? It's mine. And now your behavior is on record. As the plane cruised toward Zurich, news broke across markets. Valen divests from Atlantic. Stock plummeted. $500 million in value evaporated in minutes. When the plane landed, corporate agents boarded. They walked past Michael and Sarah and straight to Edward. Mr. Lang, one said, you're banned from all GI-certified airlines. Your memberships are revoked. Edward stammered but said nothing as he was escorted off. Sarah and Michael were next. Internal Affairs stepped in. Administrative suspension pending investigation. James disembarked last. A VP met him at the gate. On behalf of the company, he walked right past her. The student who streamed everything now had millions of views. One passenger drafted an op-ed titled The Day Power sat quietly in 1A. Days later, Ethan posted an open letter. I stayed silent. That was cowardice. I'm starting the crew equity fund. My first 6 months of salary goes in. Valen matched it at 10-1. Even Edward resurfaced not in boardrooms, but sweeping floors at a nonprofit James had once funded. I used to think wealth meant worth, he wrote. It doesn't. Atlantic's culture changed. New policies. Anonymous reporting. Executive bonuses tied to ethics. James never gave interviews. He didn't need to. A month later, at a quiet ceremony in Newark, a new award was introduced, the James Carter Leadership Citation. Ethan presented it. James's speech was one line. Power isn't how loud you speak.